My name is Carol. For 32 years, my husband Tom and I lived in a big two-story colonial on a quiet, tree-lined street. It wasn't just a house, it was the scrapbook of our lives. I can still smell the coffee percolating every morning, hear the patter of our grandkids' bare feet on the porch, and the cheerful chatter of neighbors' voices drifting through open windows in summer. There were the pencil marks on the kitchen door frame tracking Michael's height, the ghost of a wine stain on the living room rug, and the oak tree in the backyard that Tom planted the day we moved in. Every corner had a story, but when Tom passed away 2 years ago, the house just felt huge. The silence was a physical thing, echoing in the 4 empty bedrooms. Every creak in the floorboards felt like a reminder of the life I'd lost. I was 67, and on paper, my retirement looked solid. We'd always been careful savers. Our house was paid off, a huge asset. I had a healthy 401k, and Tom's pension gave me a steady, if modest, income. The idea of downsizing didn't come from panic. It felt logical. It felt safe. My friends swore by it. Every financial article I clicked on screamed the same headline: "Secure your retirement, sell the big house." It was a chorus of reassurance, voices that now haunt me, making me feel foolish and abandoned. The plan was to finally have time to travel, join a book club, or take that art class. It was a dream of a life without worrying about mowing a giant lawn or a leaky roof. It was supposed to be peaceful. But I had no idea that this one smart decision would tear my financial security apart, piece by piece, and leave me lonelier than I ever thought possible. The decision to sell felt like closing a long, beautiful book. It was heartbreaking. Before the realtor came, I'd find myself standing in the quiet living room, my hand on the worn arm of Tom's favorite chair, flipping through an old photo album and asking his ghost, "Am I doing the right thing?" As my son, Michael, helped me sort through a lifetime of stuff, he tried to be supportive. "Mom, if this is what you need to do, I get it," he said, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. He thought he was helping me make the smart move, a decision I know he feels guilty about now. My realtor, Susan, was all business and enthusiasm. "Carol, you're absolutely doing the right thing," she said, patting my hand. "The market is on fire. You'll get a fantastic price, buy a lovely condo with cash, and have a huge nest egg left over. Think of the freedom." That was the word that became my mantra. Freedom. Freedom from property taxes that crept up every year. Freedom from the fear of the furnace dying. Freedom from the 4 hours it took to rake all those oak leaves. My retirement savings looked great on paper. I had nearly $600,000 in my 401k. Tom's pension brought in about $2,200 a month, and I planned on waiting until 70 to take Social Security. The house money would be my cushion, my travel fund, my emergency fund. The house sold so fast it made my head spin. A young family offered just over my asking price, a shocking $550,000. That number felt like a fortress. Then came the first few cracks. The realtor's commission took a $33,000 bite. Closing costs ate another $8,000. The buyer's inspection turned up minor roof issues, and they wanted a $5,000 credit. Just like that, my fortress had shrunk. "It's still a lot of money," I told myself. "It's fine." The condo hunt began at a place called The Willows, a premier 55-plus community. The unit I fell in love with was $350,000. The best part, the agent said, was the carefree living. The monthly Homeowners Association HOA fee was $400. That seemed reasonable for everything it covered. I glanced through the thick stack of HOA documents. It was dense, full of legalese. Swept up in the dream, I didn't dig into the sections on finances, reserve funds, or something called special assessments. That was a mistake that would end up costing me everything. I paid cash. After closing costs and moving, I put the remaining $130,000 from the house sale into savings, my nest egg. I had a beautiful new home, zero debt, a solid plan. Sitting on my new balcony, I felt a wave of peace. I had absolutely no idea that I was standing at the edge of a cliff. I thought the hardest part was over, but the next letter would make this feeling of peace feel like a distant, foolish dream. The first 6 months at the Willows were deceptively nice. I started drawing from my 401k to supplement my pension, but the loneliness settled in faster than I expected. In my old neighborhood, I couldn't walk to the mailbox without a 10-minute chat with Barb about her roses. Here, people gave you a tight-lipped smile in the hallway, but would scurry into their apartments. I'd find myself microwaving a can of soup for one, staring at the empty chair across the table. Sometimes I'd hear the faint sound of a neighbor's TV through the wall and feel a fresh wave of isolation. Have you ever sat in a silent room and felt like the walls themselves were closing in? Then the first letter came. The monthly HOA fee was going up from $400 to $475. Annoying, but manageable. 2 months later, another letter arrived. It wasn't a friendly newsletter. This one came in a stiff, beige envelope with a bold red stamp that screamed urgent. The words, "Notice of Special Assessment," felt like a weapon printed on thick, ominous paper. I tore it open, my stomach already in knots. The letter explained the flat roofs on all 3 buildings needed immediate replacement. The HOA's reserve fund was insufficient. My share? A one-time payment of $10,000 due in 60 days. What would you do if $10,000 vanished from your savings overnight? I felt the blood drain from my face. I called the management company. The woman who answered had a voice as cold and hard as granite. "But $10,000, I stammered. "How can the reserve fund be empty?" "Operating expenses, ma'am," she said curtly. When I pushed back, her voice dropped, dripping with cruelty. "Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be. The assessment is mandatory. You pay it, or the association can put a lien on your home and foreclose. Just like that. Pay it or lose your home." A wave of nausea hit me. My beautiful $130,000 nest egg had just taken a massive hit. Watching my savings drain felt like watching an hourglass run out. Every $100,000 gone felt like another brick of my future being ripped away. The art class I dreamed of was a complete fantasy. My world was shrinking. I was broken alone, trapped in a paradise that had become my prison. I thought that special assessment was the bottom. I was wrong. I thought loneliness was the worst part, until I learned where all our money was really going. The breaking point came with a letter about flowers. The HOA board had approved a contract to replace perfectly fine shrubs with a more modern floral design. The bill attached was for another special assessment, $2,500 per unit. Something in me snapped. This wasn't about essential repairs. It felt like a shakedown. But why? What would you do if every safety net you built was ripped out from under you? I marched to my storage locker, dug out that binder of HOA documents, and this time I read every single word. What I found made me sick. The bylaws gave the HOA board and the management company almost total power. Line items in the budget were incredibly vague. Contractual services, $250,000. The reserve fund study told the rest of the story. The board had been keeping monthly fees artificially low to attract new buyers while ignoring contributions to the reserves. Fueled by a new, cold anger, I started talking to my neighbors. I found Eleanor, a retired teacher who'd commanded classrooms with pride for 40 years, but now her hands shook as she held her coffee cup. I knocked on the door of a quiet man named Frank, a retired accountant. At first, people were scared, but I invited Eleanor and Frank for coffee. I spread the documents out on my dining room table. Frank's eyes went wide. "This is criminal," he murmured. "Their administrative fee is almost 25% of the entire budget. And look at this. The landscaping contract, the snow removal. They're all with companies owned by the same parent corporation as Willow Creek Management." It all clicked. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was a racket. Our HOA was being run by a predatory company that was using our fees to enrich itself. The cosmetic upgrades were just another way to funnel our money to their own companies. We were their personal ATM. The discovery was sickening, but it was also clarifying. I finally understood who the enemy was. It wasn't bad luck. It was a system designed to squeeze every last dime out of us. The loneliness that had haunted me for months started to burn away, replaced by a shared purpose. In my small living room, with two people who were strangers just a week ago, a tiny rebellion was born. We realized our silence was their greatest weapon. But how could a handful of retirees take on a powerful corporation that held all the cards? Realizing what was happening was terrifying, but it was the first step toward fighting back. If you're thinking about downsizing into an HOA community, knowledge is your only defense. I've put together a checklist of critical red flags to look for in HOA documents. It's free, and the link is in the description. Don't make the mistakes I did. And if you find this story helpful, please subscribe. Now, let me tell you what we did next. Our little group, me, Eleanor the teacher, and Frank the accountant, became an unlikely team of rebels. But it was the women who truly bonded. We'd sit in my condo, holding hands as we cried into our coffee, sharing stories not just of the HOA, but of our lives, our late husbands, our worries. We even laughed through the tears at old memories. That connection was something the management company could never understand. We started a weekly coffee club the first time. Only 5 people showed up, but we shared our stories. A woman named Maria, a widow like me, broke down, confessing she had to borrow from her children to pay the last assessment, a humiliation that cut her to the bone. She admitted she was skipping her own heart medication to save money. Another quiet man said he was thinking of selling at a loss, hiding the foreclosure notices from his kids just to escape. The fear was real, but so was the relief of finally saying it all out loud. Frank presented his findings, explaining fiduciary duty. the legal requirement for the board to act in our best interest. It was obvious our board was failing that duty. Week by week, our club grew. We pooled our money and hired a lawyer. Her strategy wasn't a lawsuit. The goal was to take over the HOA board. 3 of the 5 seats were up for election in 2 months. The campaign began. Frank agreed to run. We nominated a retired engineer named George, and to my own shock, I agreed to run too. The management company fought back, and they fought dirty. Suddenly, Frank got a fine for an imaginary oil leak. I was cited for a flower pot that was supposedly 2 inches too tall. It was terrifying. But then I'd see Eleanor's determined face, and I'd find the strength to keep going. This fight had given me something my money couldn't: a purpose and a community. The night of the annual meeting, the community room was packed. The old board gave slick speeches. Then it was our turn. Frank calmly laid out the numbers. George talked about the crumbling infrastructure, and then I stood up, hands shaking. I looked out at the crowd, and I saw my own story in their faces, the same hopes, the same fears. "We are not just unit numbers," I said, my voice getting stronger. "We are people. We built this country, we raised families here. Don't we deserve to live out our years in dignity? This is our home. This is our money. And it's time we took back control." The vote was by secret ballot. The sound of pens scratching on paper was the only noise in the room. I could hear the shuffle of the ballots as the management company representative collected the slips, his face a mask of smug confidence. The silence was so thick you can feel it. I held Eleanor's hand, both of us barely breathing. The counting felt like an eternity. Finally, the man stood up. He cleared his throat. "For board seat 1, Frank Miller." A wave of murmurs. "For board seat 2, George Pasternak." A few gasps. There was a collective intake of breath across the room. He paused before the last name, mine. "And for board seat 3, Carol Sampson." The room was dead silent for a single heartbeat, and then it exploded. It wasn't just applause. It was a roar of relief, of victory, of hope. People were hugging, crying. Eleanor was wiping tears from her eyes. I looked at Frank and Eleanor, and for the first time since I sold my house, I felt a profound sense of coming home. Winning the election wasn't a magic wand. It was the start of an even harder fight. Our first act was to terminate our contract with Willow Creek Management. Untangling years of mismanagement was a slow, painful slog. To get our community back on its feet, we, the new board, had to raise the monthly HOA fees, this time to actually fund the reserves. It wasn't popular, but we held open meetings, explaining every decision. Slowly, we rebuilt trust. The personal financial damage is permanent. My 401k never recovered. The big cushion from selling my house is gone, spent on roofs and lawyers and flowers I never wanted. The carefree retirement I planned for is gone forever. There are nights I feel a deep ache for the security I lost. I still miss the home I shared with Tom more than words can say. But then I imagine him, standing in the corner of the room, not with sadness, but with a proud smile, and I find my strength again. What I lost in dollars, I gained somewhere else. I am not alone anymore. My neighbors aren't strangers. They're my friends, my allies. We have potlucks. We check in on each other. Frank helps me with my taxes. I water Eleanor's plants. We built a real community from the ashes of a crisis. From one woman to another, especially to those of us who have faced loss. My fight taught me that our strength is not gone. You have to read the fine print, not just in contracts, but in life. You have to ask hard questions. And you must never underestimate the power of your own voice. I lost my nest egg, but in that fight, I found my purpose. I found my community. I got my dignity back. And that, I've learned, is a different kind of wealth, one that no predatory company can ever take from me. So, I want to ask you, is financial security really just about dollars? Or is it about who stands beside you when the storm comes? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Watch this next for another gripping tale of retirement gone wrong, plus the lesson you can't afford to miss.